Okay, fair lending, there's two major laws, fair housing and equal credit opportunity, ECOA. Those two are getting a lot of attention, and we don't have time to go through much of that. In fact, I'm going to skip through a few things here that I think would be in one area. Oh, it's right there. When you're talking about discrimination, here's three terms that are legal terms: overt discrimination, disparate treatment, and disparate impact. CFPB is looking at these three areas very, very closely. This is one where you just out and out discriminate, whether you're a lender, realtor, landlord, whatever. You're saying, if you're a landlord, you own a property service company, you say, we won't let single women in any of our units. Would that cause a problem for your company? That'd be a big problem, would it? The property management people. You can't do that. That's outright discrimination. That's an example of overt discrimination. Okay, pretty easy to prove, pretty easy. I got an example. I don't have time to give it to you yet. It exists today, though. Trust me, it exists today. Disparate treatment is a little bit different. It would be like maybe a loan officer saying, you know what, I don't speak Mandarin Chinese. And somebody came in who only spoke Mandarin Chinese, and they say, you know, I can't help you. The transaction just won't flow because I can't communicate with you, you can't communicate with me. So there's been a policy, a business decision that I won't do loans for Mandarin Chinese. But then the next day, somebody comes in and wants to buy a big home down the river bottoms, you know, $4 million house. You go, see, $4 million, 3%. Yeah, that's a commission I'd like. I have a buddy that knows how to speak Mandarin Chinese. How about if I bring him in and I can do that transaction for you? So if you're making a business decision in some direction, it's got to be every single time. Well, that gets involved here. Disparate impact comes in like maybe a loan officer says, you know what, it's my business decision that I will never do a loan under $100,000. They're too small, they're too much work, and you know, they might hold that. But it might be that the people who could qualify for that larger loan, maybe they're all of a minority race or something. Maybe you're working in, for example, out in the west part of Salt Lake Valley, where there's a lot of people out there that are foreign, and they may not speak the language, but you just say, I'm not going to do a low loan. Well, that's a business decision, but the impact on that is you may be eliminating then a class of people who could otherwise qualify, and that's disparate impact. So understand those. Again, those are legal terms. One of them is being challenged in the court right now, this disparate treatment. It's going to be interesting to see if that holds up. CFPB is again on the hook on that. So that just goes through a discussion of what I just told you about. So let's finish up with this. Who is this guy? Who's this CFPB? Okay, we know that he's been in existence since July of 2011. They currently have, as of the first of the year, 1,796 employees. That's a pretty big department for only being around for 3.5 years.
Oh my gosh.
They have the distinction of having the highest paid employee per capita of any government agency. My son applied for a job when they first came out, thinking, well, that'd be kind of fun to do. He's an attorney. The offered starting salary, $300,000. Oh. He didn't even get a response back from him. But yeah, they're very, very well paid people. Their budget, well, excuse me, of that 1,796, 46% or 834 of them are what you call field people. They're running around doing the investigations, knocking on doors, following up on complaints. 830 of them are running around. Are they here? Mm-hmm. Oh, one just drove down the street. Well, they're here. They're around. And they're looking for the kinds of things that we've been talking about. So let's look at their budget. $583 million for the department, and almost 175 for the 834 people that are running around. They got the money to do it, plus they bring in extra money too. So it's a big deal. These guys are for real. These guys are playing hardball. As a conclusion, we have some helpful hints for you that we'd like to pass on to you. And these are some of the most updated information that has come available and some changes that are as current as there is right now. The first thing I'd like to draw to your attention is earlier in the course we mentioned that the implementation date was the 1st of August. That has been changed. It's been moved back. It's now the 3rd of October, so watch for that change. And then with some research and so on, we've designed some helpful hints for you that I think will help you as you try to bring this around, as you try to put it into a perspective with your clients, whether they're buyers or sellers, and as you're working especially with title companies and mortgage lenders. The first one is learn the rule. Now, I mentioned during the beginning of the course that this is a kind of redesign of a course that we had for the mortgage people, and the state wanted to tweak that and bring it out to the real estate community. Well, the mortgage people have a 4-hour class just on what we've talked about today. So there's much, much more that we haven't covered that you will want to become aware of and want to be familiar with, especially as you begin to work with them. So learn the rule completely. Split closings are going to be a very difficult thing. There's so much coordination now that has to take place. There is some talk about doing away with split closings, but I don't think that's going to be anything that's going to happen soon. But you're going to need to coordinate very closely between lenders and between title companies so that you know exactly who's doing what disclosures are coming out from whom, and the timing, how that's working out. So be well aware of that. Be prepared to answer questions from the closing disclosure. Now, that's going to be a little bit problematic because agents will most likely not receive the closing disclosures. You're going to be getting calls from your clients, especially if you're working with the buyers. They're going to say, what is all this? How does this work? What's going on here? But you will not have seen the document they're seeing. You'll have to get your buyers to send that directly to you so that you can talk about it. Federal regulations have decided and determined specifically that there's enough information on there that it triggers the information requirement for privacy issues. And so they will not let that information come out to anybody other than the borrower. Title companies won't even get to see it. So you'll have to get that. But you most likely will be asked to discuss questions on that closing disclosure. Learn how different lenders are going to handle it. Some lenders may rely on the title company to do it. Other lenders may do it themselves. And you'll have a mix of that. The responsibility for this comes directly on the shoulders of the lender, but there's no direction. The statute is silent on exactly who is supposed to send that out. So it could be title companies, it could be lenders. And then as we mentioned earlier, be aware that you're going to have a new set of closing statements because this closing disclosure is not a disbursement document. So you'll have that disbursement document, but then the title company will likely be producing the actual disbursement documents, and we don't know what forms the title companies are going to come up with. It may be very similar to what we have now with the HUD-1 settlement statement. E-sign, it's going to be a big thing. It's been out there for a little while, not been particularly important, not used a lot, but it is a big thing because if you want to speed up that disbursement with that 3-day lag time in there, make it so that it's 3 days and not a week, then you'll want to use e-sign. As we talked about, there are some specific requirements with that e-sign. Remember the 3 parameters that need to be met that you can use e-sign and speed up that closing procedure. It's not just a lender's issue, and I hope you've gotten that flavor. It's going to rely heavily on everybody, which would be the lenders, it's going to be the title companies, it's going to be you as the real estate community. And we're going to have to work very closely together to make this work smoothly, because there's lots and lots of ways for it to get confusing. Borrowers will get confusing, sellers will get confused. It's going to be a very difficult thing for everybody. So become involved, because it isn't just a lender's issue. Patience is going to be a virtue, especially the first 2 or 3 months, probably till the end of the year. We're going to need to extend out our dates on the REPC, so those settlement deadlines, and we're hearing, like I've said before, a lot of brokers are talking about 45 days is the standard to set those REPCs to close. And we're going to need to look at probably problems, things that haven't been thought about. We're going to be looking at unintended consequences that the CFPB has not thought about as they put this into play. You're going to be dealing with loans that the completion of the application was done before the 3rd of October, and loans that have been done after the 3rd of October. And so you're going to have two entirely different systems blending together, and you're going to have to keep track. You're going to have to stay with your lenders, you're going to stay with your title company, so you know which way this is going to go. Now, with everything that we've talked about here, it's going to be a rough ride for the first few weeks, but we'll get over that. We'll do that. And I think if everybody worked together and pitching in and helping, and as we've talked about, furnishing as much information up front as you can, it'll become a thing that'll work for everybody, and we'll all be successful with it. So play with it. Be sure to call us if you have any questions. We're there to help you, and I think we'll get through this, and it'll be just fine. As I said earlier, the borrowers, the customers, the clients, they're going to be greatly benefited by this. So it's okay that we have to go through a little hurt to help our clients become more informed and more pleased with the transaction that goes through. We have a couple of other things we'd like to show you too. Be informed. We've already talked about that. These two are extremely important. Document your actions. Be very accurate and deliberate in your transactions. My son, who is actually the compliance officer for several of the lenders in the state, he's had an opportunity to talk multiple times to the CFPB. And they're telling them that their kind of method of operation when they come in is the first thing they're going to do is ask for, let me see your files, let me see your documentation. They're looking for what documents you have supporting your position, emails, phone log notes, forms, disclosure forms, whatever you've got that you can document your file with, have that in there and make sure that they are accurate. Because when the CFPB comes in, if they're looking for documentation and you show them a file that has a closing statement in it, that's not going to fly for those guys. And once they find something that's a little lacking in volume and documentation or inaccurate, trust me, they're going to dig deep and they will find problems, and that will affect you as well as all of the other agents in your brokerage. So be really careful, be really deliberate about what you're putting in those files, and keep them as much of the documentation and flow of the transactions you can. Now, the very last thing that we want to tell you, we hope that you can do all this, and we want you to be successful. Okay, you may chuckle at that, thinking, how am I going to be successful with all this stuff? Everybody's got to do it the same way. We're all in the same boat. We will get through this. We'll work it through, and it'll work for everybody. So we appreciate you being here. Appreciate the opportunity to explain this. Don't hesitate to call us if you have any questions. These things are being tweaked all the time, so new information is coming out. We'll be glad to help you, update you with what the information is, and be successful and build a great business.